Friends, the New Testament begins by presenting Jesus as the promised Messiah King, clearly descending through 42 generations from Abraham to David's royal line, all the way to his birth from the Virgin Mary. Even the wise men who came from the east were aware of the Old Testament promises about his coming. They recognized that the star which guided them to Jerusalem pointed to the birth of the promised King of the Jews. Jesus began his intensive teaching by taking his chosen disciples away from the crowds to a mountain spot. There, he privately taught them about the constitution of his kingdom. Clearly, his teaching was most unusual. It contrasted radically with the worldview and lifestyle of their contemporaries. It represented a totally different outlook. He called them to a completely different life on earth, a life characterized by sacrificial, self-giving love. This Jesus himself clearly lived out over his entire life on earth. This lifestyle contrasted sharply with the self-centered and self-serving ethno-political religious practices that surrounded them and so often prevail in the world even today. He alerted his disciples to the fact that following him and his lifestyle would bring them a great deal of persecution and suffering. They were to be rejected and harassed not because of wrongdoing, but because of choosing to be his people. He reminded them that within Israel, true prophets experienced the same harshness throughout the Old Testament period. Yet, like those faithful prophets, they were to live as salt and light. Matthew's Gospel ends with Jesus' commissioning of his holy apostles to take his liberating message of salvation to all humanity. This was to establish a new universal kingdom of righteousness, peace, and self-giving love that unifies believers of all races belonging to the heavenly Messiah King. This is exactly what the prophets Isaiah and Micah had predicted centuries beforehand. Both prophets said, "All the nations shall flow to it, and many people shall come and say, 'Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, that he may teach us his ways, and that we may walk in his paths.'" Friends, the senior apostle Peter was well aware of the fact that Jesus is the foundation of a totally different universal heavenly Israel on earth, even though rejected as king by his own people. As the promised Messiah and true Israel's ultimate prophet, priest, and king, Jesus was rejected, persecuted, and even murdered by his own people. Peter wrote to the dispersed and persecuted believers, saying in the 2nd chapter of his first epistle, "As you come to him, a living stone rejected by men, but in the sight of God chosen and precious, you yourselves, like living stones, are being built up as a spiritual house, to be a holy priesthood, to offer spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. For it stands in Scriptures, 'Behold, I am laying in Zion a stone, a cornerstone, chosen and precious, and whoever believes in him will not be put to shame.' So the honor is for you who believe. But for those who do not believe, the stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone, and a stone of stumbling, and a rock of offense. They stumble because they disobey the word, as they were destined to do. But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for his own possession, that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. Once you were not a people, but now you are God's people. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. Friends, the Apostle Paul, on his part, concluded his message to the Galatian believers who were harassed by the false teaching of Judaizers. He assured them that as God's people from different ethnicities, they are Messiah's new creation and God's true Israel. Hallelujah.